Hey, Team Thales, welcome. So we have a minute to start, so I'll just recap the rules. So we have 5 minutes for the presentation, 5 minutes for Q&A, and Alex will be keeping time, so she will give you a reminder of when 2 minutes are remaining, when 1 minute is remaining, and when 30 seconds are remaining. And then after 5 minutes, we'll start the Q&A with the sponsors. So yeah, whenever you're ready, you can share the screen and get started.
Great. Give me. Great. Hopefully everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. So hi everyone, we're Thales and we're here to present our solution for Challenge 2. We've developed a way of scaling adaptive EV charging up to the grid level. As you're well aware, EV adoption is on the rise. Due to a combination of increasing affordability, a greater amount of production and variety, and regulation, EV demand is forecasted to grow to the tens or hundreds of millions in the next 10 to 30 years. However, this growth in demand is going to cause some major issues. One of these is that with more EVs on the road, we're going to need a lot more charging stations, both at people's homes and in public spaces. With all of these cars charging at once, there's a major risk of the grid becoming overloaded with everyone charging at once. And if the grid becomes overloaded, this is going to cause a massive amount of issues, not least the very bad driver experience when you can't actually drive your car. One potential solution to this issue is scheduling charging, which means that a charge point will be able to choose which cars are charging at any one point. There are currently methods being developed to do this at a site level, but there's currently no tool to schedule charging across a number of different sites or at the network level. So our solution is an algorithm that looks at a number of individual and grid level factors and decides the optimal power level and charge timing for a group of EVs across a range of sites. Our algorithm, which Becca is going to speak through in a minute, would be used by a network of charge points, which allows them to automate demand management of any car being plugged in at once. The benefit of this is that for each individual driver, they'd have much less impact on their charge profile because the difference between having 3 cars being optimized and hundreds of thousands of cars being optimized is major. But even though the actual impact to the driver will be much less, we can still have a massive impact on the demand being placed on the grid.
To dive in to how our algorithm works in order to optimize the charge profile, it takes in inputs including the constraints of the power grid at a certain hour, as well as information about the cars being charged, such as energy levels, when they're plugged in, and maximum power. It then optimizes in order to maximize clean energy usage based on the time of day. This means that it prefers daytime charging over nighttime charging because that's when the grid is using solar over coal. Additionally, the optimizer works to minimize power peaks at the grid, site, and car level. This stabilizes the grid while also increasing the lifetime of the batteries. Ultimately, the algorithm outputs a power profile in time for each site when doing grid level optimization, as well as for each car when doing site level optimization. A prototype of our algorithm was implemented in MATLAB and is shown on the right. As we can see, cars 1 and 2 delay the bulk of their charging until after car 3, shown in yellow, has finished. This serves to make the total power curve, shown in purple, more flat, while also optimizing to charge in the daytime based on the cleanliness of the energy on the grid at that point. For this model, we used several data sources in order to inform the optimization. This includes the load on the grid and the power available from the grid at a certain hour of the day, as well as information on CO2 emissions to assess the cleanliness of power over time. In the future, we would like to incorporate even more data, especially about the statistical fleet and what the EVs are doing in their charging, such as the energy desired and time spent at the charge station. Additionally, we'd like to use data from home energy usage so that we can extend our solution to home charging and also account for energy pricing as a further tier of optimization.
We think that this algorithm would be incredibly valuable to a number of stakeholders, but we chose to focus on the use to utility providers and Chargepoint networks. For utility providers, grid balancing is going to be one of the critical problems that they face in upcoming years. And many utility providers are already providing incentives to EV owners to charge during off-peak hours. Chargepoint networks, such as yourself, also need to be able to give a good customer experience, not only to their clients, the businesses and retailers who are installing the chargers, but also their customers who want a really great charging experience. In summary, we think that our algorithm is going to play a critical part in improving grid balancing, one of the major issues with EVs and electricity in upcoming years.
Okay.
Thank you very much for listening. Do you have any questions?
So where do you think, what kind of entity would really run this software? So would it be sort of a standalone third party that sits between the grid operators and the networks, or would it be something that you would expect Chargepoint would build out, or what sort of, how were you thinking about where this algorithm would sit?
So Kevin, I'll answer that. We've thought about this in a few different scenarios. Preferably a scenario would be that Chargepoint would host it on your hardware and make data available via an API, which would also be built by Chargepoint and give that access to your utility partners and so on. Basically all the stakeholders that we mapped out. So that we think would be a key scenario that would take most advantage of this algorithm.
Yeah, in your models as well, you're looking more at the overall grid conditions. Did you think about sort of the economic model of it in addition to not just the managing the energy, what the benefit would be, the economic benefit?
Our model does not currently take into account economics, but that is one of the primary things that we see should be added to it in the near future, so that we can take into account energy prices throughout the course of the day and also as a function of the grid load in order to optimize the cost for both utilities and network charge points.
Yeah, I guess cost is directly related often to the grid impact, right? It's essentially how the utilities price it. So. Yeah, Andrew, did you have any questions about the algorithm?
You actually covered both of my questions. I really want to see kind of what kind of product we're talking about, kind of like how does it fit and the economics. So thank you for asking this already.
Yeah, I saw. Did you have any other data? Like, what were all the data sources that you looked at? I know you had a graph there about the some data you got from NREL.
Yeah, so all of our data, the majority was sourced from the California ISO. They have an open database called Oasis, which allows you to query. Our CO2 emissions were actually taken from WattTime, which is what Chargepoint uses. So we just made an API query for a particular region in California. And so actually all of our model data is taken just for one day in the summer for California only, because it's a prototype. But scaling up on a larger scale would just require being able to access more data for different states across the country or in other countries.
And I think coming back to the question of commercializing it, you'd want to run this in partnership with the stakeholders we were talking about earlier, who would have access to much greater amounts of data than the kind of publicly available samples that we could get.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that the various stakeholders that you mentioned targeting would work together to use the data versus kind of needing somebody to, like one of the ecosystem players to play really the leadership role.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's a number of ways that you could have this communicating between networks. I'm not sure exactly how Chargepoint at the minute communicates with utilities, but I'm sure there's some kind of way of at least sharing data. But I think it would have to, it works by itself, but it also would work better in collaboration with other sites. But for example, you could just install this in, if you were a workplace that had multiple offices offering multiple charging, and you'd still get value from it. It doesn't have to be at a complete US national level, but it would be more effective if it was.
So I'd like to add to that, if you
Guys,
don't.
we're out of time.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you all for your time and questions.
Thank you.
Have a
Thanks.
good day.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we have a little break.
Yeah, we have a break till 12 o'clock, so 9 PST.
Time for more coffee.
Yeah.